Saga of Sins caught my eye with an attractive stained glass window style. Everything in this world looks like it would be at home in the walls of a church. This unique graphical styling is paired with a throwback style of action platformer. You are a man back from the Crusades, and your hometown has fallen into the horrors of sin. Utilizing some form of the dark arts, I guess, you'll enter the minds of the townspeople and purge their greed, lust, wrath, and more. Is this game itself a sin, or does the gameplay match the good looks? Let's find out in the XboxEra review of Saga of Sins. Saga of Sins is a very serious story mixed with utterly ridiculous gameplay. You are Cecile, newly returned from years spent in the Crusades. Your return to the city of Sinwell is tasked by your master to have you purge it of its sin. To do this, your incredibly evil-looking scion will teach you how to enter people's minds without their permission and fight a bunch of demons until you reach the heart of the issue. It's a ridiculous premise wrapped around an incredibly dour and serious story. A handful of cutscenes do have full voice acting, and both the voice acting and the writing are fine.
In the villagers' minds, you will manifest as the monsters they see in our chapel's stained glass, and they will fight back.
They're neither bad nor good, but they are incredibly serious in their tone. Most of the cutscenes aren't voiced though, only the ones around the start and the end of each chapter. The premise of the game finds you walking around, mostly to the right, and pressing up on the D-pad once you find a person. You'll thumb through some boring dialogue, and no matter how minor the transgression, you will enter their mind without permission. Most sinners' minds contain a level full of platforming and combat, with a select few being optional areas where you just try and get more money. Money is needed to offer up at a statue so that you can superpower your demonic visages. There are 4 of these, and you'll swap between them on the fly while mind-effing the townsfolk against their will. I don't know if it's clear, but I hate the premise of this game, where every minor transgression is akin to a deadly sin and therefore gives you, the protagonist, the right to do as you please. And I admit, I gave up on playing this game anymore near the end because of mounting frustration. The game is never overly difficult outside of a few key areas, those being the constant insta-kill mechanics present in the platforming. So rarely in my 40 plus years on this earth have I wanted to smash my head through a wall. Each sin has 2 base levels and a boss. The boss's level for Greed was one of the most infuriating levels I have ever played in any video game in my entire life. It's not even that long, but jumping never feels great in this game, and you need to be pixel perfect at times during that encounter. And this frustration carries over into the combat. There are 4 different forms in Saga of Sins. The first is a dog form that shoots out bolts of energy, and there's a fire demon and a couple more that I'll try not to spoil. None of them feel very good or are exciting at all combat-wise. X is your main attack, with the left trigger being a powerful dash. To use that dash, which kills almost anything it hits, you'll need to either kill up to 4 enemies to charge it, or just find a full recharge floating in the air. The gameplay sections of Saga of Sins are as video game as it gets. I'd say it reminds me of a bad version of The Lion King or Aladdin for the Genesis. Movement is stiff and combat never feels satisfying. You'll spam projectiles which feel like tissues, and you have no moves to do outside of just turning, running backwards, and then shooting a bit more if anything gets close to you. A big emphasis on the combat is trying to line up dash attacks so that you'll gain a little bit more gold if you kill multiple enemies with one hit. The level design in general is pretty bad, so these situations feel real ham-fisted, where a full dash charge will be waiting right before a very obvious "many monsters will spawn here" area. You do have a double jump by default, which normally would be great, but the stiffness of jumping and moving left to right drains any fun out of the platforming. You'll encounter a lot of different mechanics for movements, such as weird floaty bubbles with tails that let you jump repeatedly while in them, or moving platforms that tend to hover over the most infuriating insta-death rivers of all time. The last part of the level design that's worth talking about is the checkpointing system. Every now and then you'll get a small statue that glows blue when you run by it. This is the only way to get a checkpoint, and it stinks. Far too often, the game would have me go 2 or 3 minutes in between checkpoints, and death meant losing all of that progress. And if the base game just isn't enjoyable, the thought of losing progress like that is about as miserable as it gets. Achievement-wise, the game felt a little stingy, though they were big when you did get them. But I'm not sure how many I got or whatever because the club hadn't been turned on, so I couldn't actually go in and look and see. Graphically, the game looks alright. It's quite pretty when it's not moving, but the animations are stiff and any extra graphical effects look cheap. The music also gives me that cheap mobile game vibe, like it was bought off an asset store that pinball makers love to use. I didn't have any technical issues, and Quick Resume worked great the entire time I was hating playing it. The game tends to have incredibly long breaks in between levels, so I couldn't even just focus on jumping from level to level. Starting it up was about 20 minutes of cutscenes, and getting to and from each level meant walking all the way back to the right as you wake up in bed every time a mission is over. Wrapping things up, Saga of Sins looks nice when it's not moving. Its use of stained glass window art style is probably its only redeeming feature though. The gameplay is atrocious and the level design is no better. The voice acting and music are passable at this price point, but I cannot recommend this game to anyone in good faith.